and this video was taken at the September 21st, 1985 dedication of the Johann Georg Wolkensdorfer log house in Frankenmuth's Cross Park. This new beginning ceremony for the structure saw civic leaders, volunteers, descendants, donor, Frankenmuth Historical Museum staff, and public gathered together to dedicate the building in its new role as an educational adjunct site for the community. Near the 50-foot high cross put up for America's bicentennial, this log house was carefully restored. But first, some things had to happen to lead us to today. During the Revolutionary War, some Michigan white pine seedlings took root. Only the native Chippewa Indians took note of the trees in what was later to become Frankenmuth Township. In 1825, 50 years later, and across the Atlantic Ocean, Johann Georg Wolkensdorfer was born in Obernseen, Upper Franconia, Kingdom of Bavaria. As a young adult, he decided to leave his homeland with his brother and sister and immigrate to the Frankenmuth area. With his wife, Anna Eva, they probably arrived in Saginaw in 1852 or early 1853. His brother and sister stayed in Saginaw, married and raised their families in the east side of the city, surrounded by many others of German descent. Johann Georg lived for a few years in Zilwaukee and then moved to Frankenmuth Township by 1856. His family grew up in this home, and they became members of Frankentrost Emmanuel Lutheran Church. Their 4 children, one of whom died when he was 2 years old, grew up in the area. The log house was acquired by the Historical Association in 1975. The next year, volunteers removed it for storage and eventual restoration. Research on the house identified its renovation during the time it was occupied. In the 1870s, the family lath and plastered the first floor interior. Doors and windows were changed and the exterior was covered with lap siding. The result was a log house modernized to look like frame houses being built by the Wolkensdorfer's neighbors. Johann Georg farmed 86 acres of land in sections 5 and 6 of Frankenmuth Township. He built a smokehouse and bake oven immediately outside the east door, where Anna Eva made food for her family. In 1883, they built a 2-story frame house in front of the log house and moved into it. Fortunately, they kept using the log house and did not tear it down, as was typically the case. By the time the Historical Association acquired the building, it was severely deteriorated. The house was waiting either for destruction or restoration. We chose the latter. In 1982, Robert W. Hesse of Saginaw and a longtime member of the Historical Association was approached to become the prime financial supporter of the restoration in memory of his brother, George W. Hesse. The actual restoration began in the summer of 1983 with a talented restoration crew. Tom Nixon of Kalkaska was a log house builder. Bill Hydorn of Bay City was a log hewer. They were assisted by Tom Olmeister, Jerry Hare, and Paul Ott of Frankenmuth, as well as other volunteers. 2 years of work has resulted in the restoration of this historic asset to the community. Frequent classes, special events, and demonstrations have taken place on site as the building has taken on a new beginning. Some of these programs are Pioneer Living classes, Frankenmuth 4-H Heritage Garden, Touch and Do for area 4th grade students, Pioneer Cooking, hay rides, ice cream socials, nature walks, and smoked fish or meat in the smokehouse. Talented class instructors, volunteers, and involvement of civic groups in Frankenmuth with the restoration and programming at the log house site will make our use of the area valuable to the public. The formal dedication on September 21st is just the beginning for the education and enjoyment of the site.
We welcome you to the dedication of this log house this afternoon on September 21st, 1985. We're encouraged by the number of people here to help dedicate this structure to the community in memory of George W. Hesse. This dedication is made possible by the generous support of Robert Hesse. Our first speaker today, to give us some perspective on this log structure, is Mr. Harry Basenicker, a past member of the Operations Committee of the Frankenmuth Historical Association. Harry is well known throughout the community as a pharmacist and part owner of Sato Drug. We welcome Harry.
Thanks, Gilbert. It was about 10 years ago, Bill Deschlane, his mother was a patient at the Frankenmuth Convalescent Center. And every night between 6, 7, 8 o'clock, he would come in and have his evening meal. And one day Bill came in, he was a little disgusted, and I said, "Bill, what's the matter today?" And he said, "Well," he said, "I sold a log cabin about 3 months ago. First of all, they never gave me a down payment. And secondly, I don't know when they're going to pick it up. And thirdly, I wonder when they're going to pay me." I said, "Bill, you said you got a log cabin?" He said, "Yeah, got one on the homestead." And I said, "And you didn't get a down payment on it?" And he said, "No." I said, "Okay." I said, "Bill, Tuesday night we're going to have an operations meeting. I'll bring them at the meeting, see what the committee says, and don't sell it. If you didn't get a down payment," I said, "don't sell it. It's not sold, right?" He says, "Okay." So Tuesday night of the following week, we had a meeting, and I mentioned it, and of course Tiny was our chairman. So Tiny, the next morning, goes out to Bill and says to Bill, he said, "Is that log cabin house still for sale?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, "Here's a check," and that's how we got the log cabin. Thank you.
Thanks, Harry. That was very informative on the beginnings of this structure. Our second speaker is Carl Hansen, the director of Frankenmuth Historical Association. Carl is active in many organizations, including the state and national museum organizations. Carl?
I'd just like to follow up on some of the things that Harry said. I think that one of the things that have marked the past 10 years, because it's been almost exactly 10 years to the day that we first found out about this building. At that time, I lived within eyesight of where this building originally stood, near Maple and Bradley Roads. And I used to always go around the section, and naturally every time I went around the section I would drive by this building. Well, I guess I'm not too observant, because it wasn't until that Tuesday operations meeting 10 years ago that we first became aware of the availability of this building, and here we are today. Now, a lot of people, when we talked to people on acquiring this building, they took a look at it, and you might look at some of the photographs that we have inside the building on the north side. There are some black and white and color photographs of what this building looked like 10 years ago, and I think most of you would say, "I don't recognize the place," and that's true. And we've had a lot of coincidences that have all come to fruition through planned luck and coincidences of being able to do what we've been able to do and seen today. One of the things was we did not take the advice of some people saying, "Let it burn." We didn't want to do that. There was a new life in this building. There was a new beginning to be had, and it took a lot of people coming along at the right time, including people coming down to take it down, and then finally the talking with Mr. Hesse to have him become the prime sponsor of the restoration of the building, which has been in work for the past 2 years and will be still continuing. We had a lot of the right people, a lot of the right volunteers, and in the past 2 years, 84 and 85, almost all of the work that we've been able to do here has been done by volunteers. And you'll see some of the additions that have been going on, and there's still more to be done. So we're looking forward to the future. This is not going to be a mausoleum. Just that because we are dedicating it this afternoon, it does not mean that this is the end. It is not going to be closed up and forgotten about. This is just the beginning. The most recent coincidence was last Saturday, a week ago, when Bud Tice was working on the smokehouse over to your right, and that's still being worked on. He's still got another bunch of courses to go. And we knew that there was the door to that smokehouse. We remember taking it down, but we didn't know what happened to it, because when we went to get it, we couldn't find it. So I called Heather and I called John. No one could remember anything other than, yeah, I remember it. Well, last week, Hilb Herzog was walking along the river, and there it was. It had floated away. We did not have that bad a memory. It was stored there. The river rose, washed it away. He found it downriver a couple hundred yards from where it was stored, and he brought it over last week. So the coincidences are still happening, and we're looking forward to, after today, having a new beginning of this building. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Mrs. Maynard Wolkensdorfer will help us in understanding some other aspects of the house and her part in the family history. Mrs. Wolkensdorfer.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank everybody that had to take part in this. The work they have put in, the loving care they have put in. Nancy, as I understand, is to teach the classes. I hope she can instill to the youngsters a family unit that lived in this house. There are so many memories that comes back. My husband has been dead just a short time, and when they were looking up our family history, our genealogy, they would call him and talk to him on the phone. He was an invalid, but his mind was sharp. He remembers the log cabin with the dirt floor. He was just a youngster. He was 75 when he died, so they know it was a good long time ago. Now it's 12, 13, 14. That's the Wolkensdorfer name. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law, they left out the S to shorten it. 13, we used the S. My father-in-law spelled it D-O-E-R, so 14. And when they gave me a chart or a blank to fill in my name, my husband's name was Maynard, 7 letters. Our last name, I had 20 letters to get in this little space that you have to sign. Quite a long time ago, a German lady told me that she translated the Wolkensdorfer name. She said it was clouds over the village. We have clouds over the village. Today is Wolkensdorfer. So I thank you very much.
Mrs. Donald Strobel is our guest today and our culmination in our look at the past.
I don't know if you can hear me or not. I had come out and taken pictures of the cabin when they were working on it so my father could see it. But other than that, I, like my mother, would like to thank everybody involved. It's really, really something, and I'm glad it will go on. Thank you.
This brings us to the present time in 1985, when we see ongoing projects, the erected house and outbuilding, the garden, and various herbs around the structure. William Zender, a past president of the Michigan State Museum Association and presently serving on a I know I couldn't say that word. Thank you. Sesquicentennial Commission for the State of Michigan will bring us news of the present.
Thanks, Bud. You know, you're a school teacher. You're supposed to know how to pronounce all those things. My experience with log houses started in 1975 with my personal moving of a log house. That was the Mueller log house in Frankentrost. And when we were moving that is when Harry and the rest of the people became aware of this log house. The first time that Carl and my dad and I went out there, we looked at this house and we found out, or the Wolkensdorfer house, discovered that the dimensions were the same, the basic construction was the same, and the condition was just as bad. The roofs were leaking, the floors were creaking, and the sill logs were rotting, and it was very similar to the one I had had. Basically, the old house was waiting. It was either waiting for the bulldozer, or it was waiting for some bullheaded historians to take over. Over a period of months, my father, Tiny, and Carl, and the rest of the operations committee went back and forth as to what to do. But finally, in September of '76, the JCs moved in with equipment, manpower, sugar beet trucks, and they dismantled the old log house for later re-erection. At this point, the Wolkensdorfer house again went into waiting. For 6 years it waited, stacked up like sticks of lumber. It was waiting for a site to be selected. It was waiting for volunteers to start work. It was waiting for the capital to fund the project. Wouldn't it be a shame if this beautiful log house was not so neatly dovetailed together and the character of this building was still stacked up like lumber? Today, the joys of the cabin or the log house are very evident. Just the beauty of its surroundings. What a symbolic entrance and natural entrance to the city of Frankenmuth. You have the log house that represents Frankenmuth's early heritage. You have Cross Park, which was put up to commemorate 200 years of the freedom in the United States. And you have the cross, which depicts 2,000 years of the salvation of Jesus Christ. Now, this house has provided the opportunity for association members to share Frankenmuth's history through hay rides, through summer socials, and many other fellowship events. The enchantment of the log house has been repeatedly understood by my children. They've come out here for Touch and Do, for Pioneer Living, for Harvest Days, and it's through these programs and their observations that they and I can truly appreciate the hardships and the struggles that our ancestors went through coming to Frankenmuth. We can all better understand the value of work, the toil that went into each day, the persistence and perseverance that they needed just to survive. Now, Michigan in 1987 will be celebrating its sesquicentennial, 150 years of statehood. I'd like to ask each and every one of you, what projects are now waiting? What programs are waiting? Waiting for your spark, your enthusiasm, waiting for your persistence and perseverance, waiting for your initiative, your drive, waiting for your financial support. Frankenmuth has been good to all of us. It's provided us with occupations, good neighborhoods. It's a community where its heritage and its historic values run very deep. And I'd like to therefore challenge each of you to stop waiting and start doing. Let's have programs and projects completed for Michigan's 150th birthday. Had the Operations Committee not moved forward, had the many hours of volunteers, and most specifically the financial commitment that was made by Bob and Eileen Hesse, we and all our children would still be waiting. In 1982, my father, Tiny, knowing that George Hesse had been very interested in the historic buildings of Saginaw, approached his brother Bob and said, "Bob, what a more fitting memorial for George than the reconstruction of the Frankenmuth log house." With tears in his eyes, Bob said to Tiny nothing would be more suitable, and he'd be more than happy to assist in the restoration. Bob and George Hesse were born in Saginaw, Michigan. At the time of Bob's birth, his father was already in the foundry business. Brother George spent much of his adult years in Cuba working for the United Fruit Company. When George finally returned to Michigan, Bob was already the manager of the Valley Gray Iron Foundry Company. It was through Bob's determination and innovation that the foundry became successful. Throughout his life, Bob Hesse got things done. At age 62, with no heirs to take over the foundry, Bob sold the foundry. And as he says, he's been unemployed ever since. He has always gotten things done. He did not wait. Would you please welcome with me the major donor for the Wolkensdorfer log cabin in memory of his brother George, Mr. Bob Hesse.
I didn't prepare any speech because had I done so, I'd probably forgotten it anyway. However, something I shall never forget is Tiny Zender. You have a fabulous person in this town. He was the one that prevailed upon me to take an interest in this thing. And the thing was essentially go from the very first. I had a very pleasant time. I was out here with the workmen. We had a good rapport. And I was delighted with all the circumstances of it. And I should like to thank everyone that participated in this, those that were paid and those that volunteered their services, because it would not have been done without all of those people. And to wind it up, I would once more like to say, you have a fabulous man in Tiny Zender. And I am very grateful he gave me an opportunity to do this for my brother. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hesse, for those kind words, and we appreciate you. The city has been gracious to offer the Cross Park as a site for these buildings, and from the White House yesterday to the log house in Frankenmuth today, Mr. Mayor Richard Kraft is here to speak on behalf of the city of Frankenmuth.
Sesquicentennial. I can say sesquicentennial, and I'm not a teacher. And it is true, I did have the privilege yesterday of shaking hands and speaking with President Ronald Reagan in Washington. And it was a nice experience, but it certainly was not a nicer experience than to be part of this gathering here today. This is another one of those occasions that makes being a part of Frankenmuth a wonderful experience in living. Not only is our community vitally concerned and interested with the ongoing building and development of our exciting future, we do, as a community, also remember, and our community supporters, that we, due to our remember as a community and community supporters that we owe our comfortable present to the dedication and commitment given by the generations that preceded us. It is appropriate that we do humbly remember these past efforts and hopefully learn and continually grow from the lessons learned by our forefathers as they struggled for survival in the wilderness that greeted Georg Wolkensdorfer in 1856. I believe that pausing to remember these past sacrifices put forth by our community founders and settlers is a signal to those around us that we sincerely appreciate and are deeply grateful for all that we have inherited through no effort of our own. I am proud to be a part of a community that possesses this very appropriate attitude. The city of Frankenmuth and its city council is pleased to be in a position to make this land available for this, the only original log building in the vicinity. We are fortunate that the placement of the Wolkensdorfer log house on this site exposes this part of our history to the millions of passers-by on this highway every year. We therefore feel that this addition to the overall historical recognition efforts will serve as a very significant asset to the city as a whole. In my role as mayor, therefore, I want to extend the thanks of the city to all that had a hand in making this development possible. As Bill alluded to, it is also very fitting that this log cabin is located in the shadow of the cross erected in 1976 to honor our nation's 200th birthday. All of us here today know how significant our religious commitments over the years have been in the overall development of Frankenmuth. The placement of this original log home near the base of the cross quietly tells the passers-by that this association has been and still is a very high priority in this community. I hesitate to single out individuals or committees for special recognition because you always run the risk of overlooking someone that shouldn't be overlooked. I would, however, again like to thank the Frankenmuth Historical Association and its Log House Restoration Committee for the many, many hours of work and planning that they have put into this project. We as a city are certainly obliged to you for the sincere interest that you have in our history, and we commend you for it. I would also like to pass on a special thanks to Carl Hansen, who, by the way, is listed in our program as the ex-director, and I think that's a mistake. I think he's still with us. I hope so, because we need him. But seriously, Carl is truly a professional in his field, and in my opinion is a real asset to Frankenmuth. Thank you, Carl. You are appreciated more than I think you really know. And it's a special privilege for me to pass on our community's thanks to Bob Hesse and Eileen, whose financial contribution, as we just heard, had a great deal to do with making today's dedication possible. Bob has made this contribution in honor and memory of his brother Georg Hesse. George, who was known to most of you here, was also a very good personal friend of mine and a sincere Frankenmuth booster. I know that from my personal experience. He was a strong member of the Frankenmuth Lions Club and offered help wherever and whenever he could, not only in Lions Club projects, but other areas of the community as well. He was a daily visitor to Frankenmuth and was a living public relations vehicle for Frankenmuth wherever he went. And I know that because I had traveled some with him. And Bob, I want you to know that our community appreciates the efforts that you are putting forth unselfishly on our behalf, both you and Eileen. And I know that they are many beyond what we are recognizing here today, behind the scenes. I know that the name of George and Bob Hesse will remain forever in the roster of names that helped Frankenmuth remember its origin. Thanks again, Bob and Eileen. Appreciate it very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been my privilege to bring to you the thanks and commendation of a grateful community at this log house dedication ceremony. I wish you well in future endeavors and assure you that the city will cooperate with you to the fullest extent possible. Thank you very much, and congratulations on a job well done. Thanks again, Bob.
Thank you, Mayor Kraft. This is truly a new beginning for this structure, this house. And as we're trying to represent the struggles of the early settlers in this community and how they had to do everyday chores, we can be truly thankful we can go home each night to our modern conveniences. However, this time, Mrs. Nancy Enderchuk, the curator of education at the museum, will help you with understanding some of the future plans and projects that will be occurring on this site. Nancy?
This is the beginning. We've just barely scratched the surface on the things that we have planned to do here at our log house. It's like an eternal circle. We will continue to plan new things, and hopefully they'll be interesting and exciting for everyone. In the past 2 years since the log house has been up, we've had many programs. We've had 2 years of 4th grade touch and do here, many Pioneer Living classes, Winter Wildlife classes, 2 log house Christmases, a log house Halloween, ice cream socials, hay rides, many 4-H programs almost every week. including our heritage garden that is being taken care of and grown by the Frankenmuth 4-H. Board meetings, operation meetings, staff and operation and board picnics, archaeology classes, and many nursery school programs have gone out here already, just in the past 2 years. In the future, we plan to do just as much and more. We want to plan programs for the whole family, for adults and children, as well as the ever-elusive teenager. We hope to have day camps. A nature trail is in the planning. An enlargement of the garden and a new placement for the garden site. All of these things will be done in the future. A key ingredient to all of this is the dedication of our instructors and volunteers who come out here and go through these programs and work on them very hard to make a very nice place and very nice activities go on here for the community. There are still needs that need to be met, and we are planning on them in our log house committee. And we hope someday that this log house will be able to be solely self-sufficient, so we can come out here and do a program without too much worry. There are 3 ingredients, I think, that need to make this place self-sufficient, and fortunately we have 2 of them. One of them stands over here. It's our outhouse. And another one is inside, is our stove. For any of you who have been out here in the cold, like today, that stove really is a nice addition. A well is our next goal. And I think when we have a well, that will make our picture complete. With the addition of the wood stove and our smokehouse that is under construction right now, I think we're going to be able to offer a whole new gamut of programs. We still need furnishings. You can see the house is kind of sparse, and we are actively seeking those furnishings. We're actively collecting pre-1870 furniture and cookware. As you can see, we've got many things to do, and we've got many projects that are ongoing. I think we've developed a very good reputation in this area, in the whole Thumb area, for our programs that we've offered out here, and I think from that we've got a good base to work on. I'd like to give my thanks again to the instructors who've done so much to make our programs a success, our many volunteers who come out here and help with our touch and do, our demonstrators, such as the Colemans here today, and our demonstrations inside the house put on by our instructors. And especially I'd like to thank Mary Nichterlein, who comes out here anytime I say, Mary, let's go, we got to clean up the log house, or we got to haul out some water, or we got to go weed the garden, or we've got to go do this or do that. I'd like to thank everybody who's here who made this possible.
Thank you, Nancy. You gave us a lot of information on what we're trying to do in the future. Mrs. Rosemary Jacks has been instrumental in getting the 4-H program on this site with the garden and other activities. And if Rosemary would tell us more about what they're going to be doing, we'd like to hear from her right now.
Thank you. It's been 2 years now that our Frankenmuth 4-H pace setters have planted and maintained a garden here at the log house. The heirloom seeds that we have planted were varieties that originated before the 1900s. And you usually won't find them in your seed catalogs. The museum ordered them for us from Cornell University. For example, the pumpkin that you see on the porch is a Connecticut field pumpkin. That's the type that was grown by the Pilgrims. There are many other varieties that we grew in the garden this year, and we have plans for the future to try other varieties. An herb garden is an important part of our garden here at the log house. We discovered that the early settlers had an herb garden and used them chiefly for cooking and medicinal purposes, as well as for their beauty and fragrance. One of the families from our 4-H group made the wooden signs that you see. The herb garden signs also show the German names for the various herbs. This project that we have started in our 4-H group will not be non-existent during the winter months. Of course, we won't be able to come out here and work in the garden, but we plan to have a heritage garden group that will make new signs for the garden. We're going to have some old-fashioned crafts, and later we plan to start seeds indoors and give them a head start in our garden here this spring. We also plan to expand the garden plot. One of our hopes for the future is that we might eventually have a well on this property. Every time the members of our group come to weed and hoe the garden, they bring along jugs of water. So you can see we depend on Mother Nature and the children of our group to furnish the water for the garden. This summer, Mother Nature didn't cooperate too much, so some families hauled as many as 25 gallons of water when they would come to hoe the garden. We are very glad that our 4-H members and leaders could have a part in this dedication today, in this community that values their heritage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rosemary. At this time, Mr. Harold Eckert, on behalf of the Log House Restoration Subcommittee, the Board of Directors of Frankenmuth Historical Association, and its membership, will present a gift.
You want to give me a handout?
Oh, I'll give you a handout, yes.
Thank you, Bud. You know, they say that they save the best until last, but I really didn't deserve that, you know. You know, everybody's clapped for everybody else, but I think Bud has done a real nice job on the Master of Ceremonies. I think we should give him a hand. Right, now, when you said before, and now we come to the presents, I got shook up because I thought, did he skip something? Did I miss something? Or did I forget something? We talked about presents. I thought it was about the gift. I have been elected. I have been asked, and I have volunteered, and to present this gift to Mr. Hesse. And I would also like to say, before I do that, I think it's really neat. It's really something special. You know, it's not everybody, and there are very few men who would build a monument to their brother. I think that's a real testimony of love, and no matter how we look at it, that's why it's sitting here. And as it says on the plate, it's in loving memory. And I think that's something that can always be remembered. So I'd like to take this time, Bob, to present, do my thing here, you know. I don't know if you have to get up here.
Plenty of room there.
Well, no, I guess you better come up.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
That's good stuff. Yeah. I don't know how we're going to do this. Anyway, it says here, to Robert W. Hesse from the Frankenmuth Historical Association and myself.
Beautiful.
Now, well, that's not the wrapper. I mean, the wrapper, you know, there's something inside, too.
Glad you told me. It's nice to know.
You want to take it off, or they want to see it? So
I want to see it, too, if you don't mind.
Well,
sure it's mine now.
Yeah, well, okay.
Would you suggest a place where I start here without damaging all the ornamentation?
Well, I don't know. My wife wrapped it, so I don't really should
all
ask
the
her.
nasty things I said about Harold. That he should be so nice to me. Oh, starting out very, very nice. There you go. I think you can pull that off the end.
Yeah.
Can't you? Pull the whole thing.
My wife is going to be upset.
Oh, she is?
Yeah. But your local famous artist.
I don't know how you could have done anything better. Thank you very much. I won't be as nasty as I used to be.
Go ahead, I don't care.
I'd like to thank everyone. Isn't that beautiful? Thank you.
You're next.
I'm next. Thank you. Thank you, Harold and Bob, for this day. At this time, we would like to conclude this dedication by singing God Bless America. But before we do that, we encourage you to visit each of the displays then today and make it a little bit more of an afternoon. For those of you who have to get to the game, we understand. Feel free to ask questions of the different people around so that you gain more of an understanding of the history and more of the things that happen in the ordinary day of a pioneer family. And my voice isn't the best. I've been described as having a gravel voice, especially by my students. And I have one of them here today, so I have to watch my language today, too. I bet I'll hear about that pronunciation of that word for the rest of this year. There are about 150 days left. Yeah.
Which word? Which word?
Sesquicentennial. Okay, so if we would begin with the song. And if you don't know the words, just kind of follow along anyway. There's at least one of them.
Tuning in for Tiny, right?
I think so. Wally Brunner does this the best. But and yeah, every time we have a meeting, this is his favorite song. So if I start on the wrong note, just that's the way it goes, I guess. Have a question? I have a verse here. One verse. I only know one verse. So if you guys know the second verse, you're on your own.
Oh, the second verse.
Right. Shall we please rise if we could? God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Thank you all for coming today. It's been a real pleasure.